Hello, you're watching part 2 of a trilogy on the fascinating rise of the Marathas, a Hindu group from central India who were key in the subcontinent's history. If you missed part 1, watch it first to understand this part. The link appears both at the top right of the screen and, as usual, in the description. It's 1709 in the Indian subcontinent. The Chhatrapati, that is, the leader, Maratha, is Shahu. The Marathas defeated the Mughals after a terrible war that lasted more than 26 years. Chhatrapati Shahu rules during a crucial time as the Mughal Empire weakens due to internal divisions, uprisings, and corruption. Meanwhile, the exhausting wars that the empire fought against the Marathas, from Shivaji to Chhatrapati, had a disastrous effect on the empire's financial and human resources. Moreover, Chhatrapati Shahu, unlike his father, Sambhaji mentioned in the previous episode, becomes a competent head of state, conciliatory, diplomatic, and a meritocrat. Shahu calms his kingdom and gathers capable advisors, restoring order to the Maratha kingdom, largely due to the Peshwa, Prime Minister Balaji Vishwanath. He will exploit Mughal divisions to gain recognition of the Maratha kingdom within Shivaji's established borders. That is, going beyond the borders after the war ended, while seizing Gujarat and Khandesh, which made them tributaries to the kingdom, thus considerably strengthening the Maratha kingdom. In 1720, Peshwa Balaji Vishwanath died, and his young son Bajirao, only 20 years old, was chosen by Chhatrapati Shahu to succeed him. Peshwa Bajirao quickly surrounded himself with dynamic young men. Among them was his younger brother Shimnaji Appa, which will be important later. He promoted forming a Hindu empire by uniting the subcontinent's Hindu lords, inspired by Shivaji's Hindavi Swaraja. For this, he wanted to push north and destroy, in his own words, the Mughal Empire by striking at its root, that is, by taking Delhi. It's a particularly ambitious plan, as you can see by looking at the map. Though weakened and struggling, the Mughal Empire remains formidable and isn't the only threat to the Marathas. The young Bajirao successfully manages his first years as Peshwa, despite many internal and external difficulties, which he handles with a firm hand. In 1728, a multi-front war breaks out between the Maratha kingdom and a pretender to the Maratha throne. And with the state of Hyderabad, which is a vast Muslim state that formed to the east of the Hindu kingdom and wishes to seize new lands, the situation stays complicated until Shahu firmly gives military command to Bajirao, despite the fact that the latter is a Brahmin, and therefore, in principle, not destined for war. Once again, this is an example of meritocracy. Maratha. This is essential to understanding their many successes. Bajirao then achieved remarkable feats leading the Maratha army. Relying on the Ganimi Kava and his brilliant sense of strategy, he eventually managed to lure the powerful army of the Nizam to where he wanted. He harasses them, then gives up when he thinks his enemy will pursue. Near Palkhed, selected for its trap-like terrain, the Marathas began the battle as the Nizam and his troops marched. As soon as the Nizam realizes it, he sends his army at a run toward the battle. In his haste, he leaves the rearguard and artillery on the banks of the river he has just crossed. The trap then closes, and his army, having lost much of its firepower, finds itself surrounded. With only a tiny distant stream for water, his army lacks an adequate supply. Thus, besieged, in a particularly unfavorable position to fight without water, and therefore threatened with complete destruction, the Nizam resigns himself to surrender. This masterstroke in the Maratha victory that followed marked Bajirao's first major success, built on the Maratha tradition of speed and flexibility from earlier conflicts. With crucial but often overlooked help from his brother Chimnadi Appa and his generals, he restored the position. Maratha in Gujarat, after contesting it, made Malwa a tributary and saved the Raja of Bundelkhand by defeating the Mughals. In return, he'll get new lands and marry a certain woman. Mastani, the subject of a magnificent Indian film titled Bajirao Mastani, which is absolutely worth watching in its original version with subtitles. The Peshwa then continues his quest by gradually expanding the kingdom, always with the help of his brother. He defeats a major rebellion led by a prominent Maratha chief at the Battle of Baroda. From then on, he prepares a major campaign against the Mughals, with the goal of fulfilling his ambition to create a Hindu empire. Launched in 1736, the Marathas, despite some setbacks and thanks both to their speed and to the incompetence of the Mughal military leaders, managed to reach Delhi with a large army, mainly made up of cavalry. They occupy the suburbs of the city in order to intimidate the Mughal emperor and force him to accept peace terms that are very favorable to the Marathas, notably transferring many Rajput lords under Maratha authority. Bajirao easily defeats the Mughal breakout attempt, which, despite having 30,000 men, is poorly led and of low quality, as the best Mughal forces are away from Delhi. The Marathas actually only face a reckless contingent of 8,000 men. They decimate them and drive them off, losing only a few men. This will make the enemy army scatter and spread panic in the city. For example, some enemy commanders and officers returned to the city completely naked. The Maratha horsemen stripped them in the middle of the battle simply because they liked their rich outfits. So the effect was successful. Panic seizes Delhi and the Mughal court, which is saved by the powerful imperial army's late arrival, which the Marathas had outpaced. The Marathas decide to return to Maharashtra, but it's not that simple. On their way back, they encounter a coalition formed by the Mughal emperor after the major scare in Delhi. This coalition includes troops from the Nizam of Hyderabad, the Mughal Empire, and Rajput vassals. The key battle, comparable to Austerlitz, occurs in Bhopal, a city with a significant fort strategically placed to block the Marathas' return. According to estimates drawn from the correspondence of the time, the forces present were distributed as follows. The Marathas had about 80,000 men, while the coalition consisted of 34,000 men. The Nizam had the region's best artillery and 50,000 imperial troops. Rajput brought 20,000 reinforcements, so 80,000 Marathas faced 84,000 coalition troops on site, and 104,000 in total. The coalition forces take up a strong defensive position around and within the fort of Bhopal, aiming to hold and block the Marathas' advance, likely also to prevent Peshwa and his generals from using their usual tactics. This idea will surprise Bajirao, and his letters to his brother Timnadi are almost funny because you can sense his reaction. His disbelief quickly turns against the coalition forces, who find themselves surrounded and, because of their position, can no longer make the best use of their artillery. The Marathas pin down the enemy in a small area by attacking the outermost positions, a bit like how a border collie would do with its flock. The Nizam's army, once again, in principle more powerful than the Maratha army, therefore loses the initiative and finds itself besieged, cut off from all supplies and harassed, day and night, by the Marathas, who try to exhaust the coalition forces by forcing them to be on constant alert. At the same time, the Marathas rout the Mughal reinforcements. Then all attempts to break through consistently end in failure for the coalition forces. The Nizam's army is heavier and slower, while the faster Marathas quickly concentrate their forces at each attack. These repeated attempts exhaust the Nizam's troops, letting the Marathas gradually tighten their grip by confining the enemy to a smaller space. After 24 days of siege and fierce fighting, the Nizam, having failed in a new desperate attempt to break out of the situation and whose army is now in a very poor state, is forced to surrender. He signs the Treaty of Doraha Sarai on February 11, 1738, giving the Marathas money and new territories. It's another decisive victory for the Marathas, under the command of Bajirao. The Mughal Empire can't do much since it's also under pressure from a Persian invasion led by Nadir Shah. A brilliant Persian king and strategist, his remarkable life warrants a mini-documentary. His invasion led to Delhi's fall and sacking in 1739, with the Mughals losing several regions. This sacking and the devastation by the Persians effectively sealed the fate of the Mughal Empire, leaving it extremely vulnerable. You can see where I'm going with this. Guess who takes advantage of it? Yes, the Marathas take advantage of it, but that will be covered in the next documentary. While discussing major movements in the north, it's important to note that the Marathas and Portuguese have clashed regularly since 1730, highlighted by Shimnaji Hapa, Bajirao's brother, and his generals capturing Bassein. The victorious outcome of these clashes allows the Marathas to recover many territories where the Portuguese had settled, ensure respect for Hindus in Portuguese territories, but also to impose their views on the British present in Bombay, who witnessed the Portuguese debacle that they wished to avoid for themselves. The Maratha kingdom became an empire under Bajirao, with Maratha nobles playing an equally crucial role in its growth. Beyond Bajirao's campaigns, the kingdom's ambitious nobles sought to expand their power, wealth, and lands. In doing so, they take advantage of any weakness in their opponents within reach, and as a result expand the kingdom, which becomes an empire. As an illustration, in 1739, the Maratha Raghojee Bhonsle, who was not related to Shivaji but belonged to the same dynasty, governor of Berar for the Chhatrapati, Shahu seizes the kingdom of Nagpur, and then pledges allegiance to him. Through Bajirao, another kingdom was added to the Marathas, fully justifying the Chhatrapati title. Bajirao led 2 more campaigns after his Bhopal victory. The first was unsuccessful due to poor preparation. This was rare enough to be noted against the Nizam of Hyderabad, and a second campaign towards a kneeling Mughal empire. He couldn't finish it because he was taken by fever. In April 1740, this great statesman died. What will happen to the Maratha Empire? How will the empire respond to the growing European presence? Does the death of the Peshwa signal the decline of the Marathas? Well, find out in the next episode. The colorful, action-packed history of these people is far from over. Thank you to all. Thank you for watching part 2. In the next episode, a Eridote label member will join me. I won't say any more, and I'll leave it as a surprise for you. If you want to support us for all our work, a thumbs up and a comment sharing your impressions, your feedback, or just to say whether you liked it or not would be greatly appreciated. You can also support us financially through UTIP, which simply involves voluntarily watching ads that give us a few cents or leaving us a tip. Another option is Typee, where you can contribute euros one time or monthly to help fund Litchi's illustrations. Access some of the sources, a few hardware upgrades, as well as the time I spend on this content. Thank you all again for your support and interest. It's a little-known topic, so talk about it with those around you and be its proud standard bearer by sharing this content on your social networks. See you soon for the next part.